Every person in this world, despite having different traditions and cultural backgrounds, deserve the right to live peacefully and deserve justice in this world. Rights are one of the essential things for human beings in their social life. They deserve the rights to own things, voice out their concerns and needs and be protected. No one should ever restrain them from asking for the rights they deserve. However, having a right does not mean that the right should be received or taken illegally. Having rights does not mean one should be downgraded and stepped on. Rights are divided into many types, and one of the rights that this term paper will be focused on is abuse of rights and economic crisis. Economic rights are the ability of someone to earn wealth or property. Even the smallest property, such as a pencil case for instance, is considered as someone's property as the pencil case is under someone's possession. Economic rights are normally being related to social and cultural rights. An economy works in a society. Hence, if there is any kind of inequality or corruption in an economy, then the society could also be affected and corrupted. Since the year of 2012, the United Nations has started to develop Sustainable Development Goals (SDG) to cater this issue of rights abuse, economic crisis, and many other global issues that the modern world is facing. Hence, SDG play their roles in tackling this matter by promulgating their 8th goal, which is to promote sustainable economic growth, productive employment, and decent work for the public. The 16th goal of SDG, which is to ensure a peaceful society, promote justice, and ensure an inclusive institution for everyone at all levels, is also very much related to this term paper. Therefore, this term paper will discuss a few questions and some research that has been made regarding this issue to give us the clear view, especially on the misuse or abuse of right and global economic crisis. The questions are: what is meant by misuse or abuse of rights? What causes the global economic crisis to occur? How does misuse and abuse of rights directly affect the consumers and Muslims? Is there any relationship between abuse of rights and global economic crisis? And the last one, how can we overcome the issues of abuse of rights in the economy? The concept of abuse of rights, which appears in many aspects in civil law nations, refers to the idea of malicious exercise of rights that can result in civil liability and adverse impacts on the public. The concept of misuse of rights, in general, provides that defect in the negative sense. It can be imposed on someone who has exercised a right in a way that has caused harm to someone else. In that comprehension, at least one of 4 conditions must be met to the duration. The first one is the predominant motive for exercising the right is to cause harm. There is no serious or legitimate motive for exercising the right. The right is exercised in violation of moral rules, good faith or basic fairness, or the right is used for a purpose different than what it was granted for. Misuse and abuse of rights can also be easily defined as the exercise of a legal right only to annoy, hurt, or injure another in a civil law jurisdiction. The abuser is responsible for the pain that their acts have created. Rights, or also known as haq in Islamic terms, is right, true, authentic, valid, established, a just claim confirmed as truth, duty, or obligation. Haq also is defined by jurists as a Sharia recognized prescription that confers authority or right and assigns responsibility or duty. This definition encompasses Allah's right as well as human rights. Sharia is the source that bestows rights or imposes obligations. In Islam, misuse and abuse of rights are defined as when a person does something that is not his right. In conclusion, Islam places great emphasis on human rights and forbids its adherents from abusing rights. Furthermore, the emphasis and struggle for human rights can help the country achieve many goals of sustainable development through sound education, as well as being the backbone and prime policy to adjust life and facilitate the process of individual reform towards a change in thinking. In achieving the 16th goal of development, which is to ensure a peaceful society, promote justice, and ensure an inclusive institution for everyone at all levels, misuse and abuse of rights must be avoided at all costs.
Okay, so next we moving on to the second question, which is how does misuse and abuse of rights directly affect the consumers and Muslims? But before I answer the question, I want to explain a little bit about UDHR, which stands for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a landmark declaration in the field of human rights. The United Nations General Assembly in Paris issued this declaration as an equal standard of performance for all people and nations on the 10th of December 1948. It was formed to protect human dignity, personality, and equality, as well as to allow people to live comfortably and freely, expressing their thoughts and ideas without regard to their social or financial circumstances. However, this liberty must be limited because unrestricted freedom is harmful to both oneself and others. The right to unrestricted liberty will provide possibilities for irresponsible people to abuse and misuse their rights. So in this discussion, the focus is set to find out how misuse and abuse of rights affect consumers and Muslims. The answer is when individual abuse his right, it means that he has also overcome the limitations of self that should be taken care of and tends to betray others. For example, consider the recent case of an illegal meat import cartel syndicate in Senai, Johor Bahru, which involved the forgery of halal logo labeling. This has an impact on customers and Muslims in terms of food cleanliness and the halal status of the meat, as it is the obligation of every Muslim to pick halal and excellent food. Other than that, this has a significant impact on Malaysian customers as well because the majority of them are Muslims. Indirectly, the dignity of the Malaysian state as a supplier of halal food is also harmed. This thing will not happen if everyone in charge of the meat market is honest and does not abuse their rights or misuse their power. Aside from that, selfishness and ego will emerge in society. Humans' affection and empathy are eroded by this selfish nature. Following that, oppression will arise among both customers and the community. For example, the issue of hiding essential goods such as sugar and rice to make a profit when the price of such goods is rising. This is all because of the greedy nature in oneself that never feels satisfied with what one has. This leads in the elimination of the principle of simplicity which Islam has traditionally applied to all Muslims. From the viewpoint of the consumers, this will result in hostility due to unhealthy competition for products and services, usurpation since only those with big power and rank will have a better life, market fraud, and many other things. In conjunction with SDG Objective Number 8, which is to foster inclusive, long-term economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. As a result, all of these bad attitudes pose a threat to Muslims because widespread usury will continue to exploit the difficulties of others for personal gain. From Surah Al-Baqarah verse 275, it is mentioned that those who consume riba will not stand on the day of resurrection, except as a person who has been trashed by shaitan, leading to insanity. That is because they claim that trade is simply like riba, despite the fact that Allah has authorized commerce while forbidding riba. So, whomever hears a warning from his Lord and refrains from eating riba will not be punished, but whoever returns to riba will live in the hell.
Moving on to the next question, which is, what causes the global economic crisis to occur? Global economic crisis is a situation whereby a country has sudden downturn due to financial crisis.
What causes the global economic crisis to occur? It is because currency exchange rates have fallen, price increasing in essential needs high inflation rates, burden of the national debt is too much, fall of the stock market, and the last one, unstable economic development causes economic become slow. Introduce the Islamic finance to overcome the economic crisis. The ultimate aim for Islamic finance is to spread socio-economic justice among all peoples, regardless of their whereabouts. Thus, from the foregoing discussion of the causes of current financial crisis in economic global, the tenets of Islamic finance indicate how it has potential as a viable alternative global financial system. Islamic finance provides Sharia compliant banking purpose and compromising moral guideline for dealing with money. Supply of money must be proportionate with the prospects of real growth in the economy in order to provide for a sustainable. From sustainable development goal perspective, with the Islamic finance to overcome economic global crisis, it can end the SDG number 1, which is no poverty in all its form, everywhere, because there are people have to pay zakat towards their properties and the justice can be done.
Abuse of rights and global economic crisis can be looked at as closely related, and one of the examples that can be given is corruption. When we talk about corruption, we can assume that corruption will deter investors from giving their hard-earned funds to the country. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, a country with a high level of corruption has an unstable economy, forcing investors of FDI or foreign direct investments to flee. Developing countries require foreign investments to cool their economies. Investors are frightened of incurring huge economic, political, and social consequences if they invest in these countries. The emerging countries will be the most affected by this factor. For example, Malaysia, Indonesia, Iran, and Iraq. However, developed countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Spain are not immune to these impacts of corruption in their own economic bubbles. Money or resources that should be utilized to assist those in need might be diverted, resulting in income disparity. A developed nation's rulers can also utilize their currency to hide inflation by producing their own currency at an unmanageable rate, making it appear as if they have a lot of money when they actually don't. If we look at an Islamic perspective, Islam always teaches us to be kind and never harm others. Prophet Mohamed, peace be upon him, once said that the best among you is the one who doesn't harm others with his tongue and hands. People who practice corruption are usually the ones that the majority trust the most. To avoid that, the person must develop a sense of honesty to himself and others. Trustworthiness is a moral value that a Muslim should uphold at all times and in all places. Allah says in verse 58 of Surah An-Nisa, which means, "Indeed, Allah commands you to render trust to whom they are due, and when you judge between people, to judge with justice. Excellence is that which Allah instructs you. Indeed, Allah is ever hearing and seeing." This verse clearly indicates that Islam urges believers to preserve the confidence that has been placed in them. In Islam, it is forbidden to enjoy life in exchange for the suffering of others, as this can occur if the person who has given the trust decides to abuse it for personal advantage. For example, Sani Abacha, former chief of the army staff in Nigeria, was a dictator who served as the president of Nigeria from 1993 until his death in 1998. The US Justice of Department announces in 2014 that it has frozen more than 458 million US dollars in criminal funds stashed by Abacha and his associates around the world. Nigeria has fought for years to collect the stolen funds, but the corporation related to the Abacha family have sued to prevent repatriation. We can see that corruption not only causes harm to oneself, but also to others, and for this example, the whole Nigeria as a country struggled. In the attempt to make SDG or Sustainable Development Goals a reality, especially goal number 8, which is to promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth, employment and decent work for all, corruption has to end and has no place in this world. One of the ways to make this a reality is to prosecute and charge the one who have committed this crime so that it can be set as an example. That way, justice will prevail and we can prosper in the upcoming future.
My name is Ahmad Ahrif and I'm going to discuss about the last question from this topic, which is how can we authority and the public control the issue of abuse of rights in the economy. So this question is about how can we understand the government and the people itself should contribute in order to overcome this problem. As discussed in the recent session, it is clear that the issue of right abuse, particularly in the economy, requires considerable attention from the authorities and the general public in ways that minimize and regulate this problem. The right abuses of a property owner, lack of transparency in business, and the attitude of the individual are some of the economic difficulties that the people is facing. To deal with the issue of the misuse of rights by a property owner, the government should enforce the laws and regulations for running or starting a business when a property owner opens a business using their property. For example, the government should check that the objective of the property owner's company conforms with Sharia and does not violate any Islamic regulations. Although everyone, even non-Muslims, has the freedom to operate a company, the government should also participate in permitting specific business to avoid any illegal activities, such as the expansion of gaming establishments or a bar. Muslim business owners, in particular, should pay close attention to how they run their firms and the product they produce. Aside from that, all companies should be visible in number of different ways, and the government must play their role in ensuring that companies comply to business ethics. Transparency in business is a fundamental concept that all business owners should understand even before they start their company. Transparency in business will assist business owners in gaining their customers' trust. With every activity that the company does, it must be clear to everyone. For instance, a company should constantly reply to every customer inquiry with honesty and accept any criticism from consumers while improving overall its management and operations. They should be open not only with the consumers but also with their staff and stakeholders. To ensure its employees' rights, each company must establish two-way of engagement with them. Employees have a right to know everything about their company's goals and how it operates. The audited financial report of the company in which they invested is also available to shareholders or investors. Transparency in business not only protects public rights, but also complies with Islamic business norms such as some commercial honesty. We shall not follow the actions of people from the Jahiliyyah period, since Islam promotes honesty in business. To prevent economic rights abuses, the government should be able to control the country's financial flow as well as the cash flow of companies inside the country. They should be able to create a financial budget and fiscal policy that is systematic. As previously discussed, some corporations violate consumers' rights to get their actual desired items at a reasonable price by concealing the commodities and raising the price as demand grows. According to the law, stockpiling is illegal, since it includes lying to clients and not being transparent. The price of some commodities will rise over time as demand for them rises. However, the government should be involved in private business to prevent consumers from being charged excessive price. Consumers should be able to afford any product, particularly when purchasing basics. Price control will prevent monopoly and increase market competition. Everyone has a responsibility to minimize economic rights abuse and misuse. It stems from an individual's desire to make a difference for themselves and others. It is important to remember to behave oneself in an Islamic manner at all times, especially in business. To conclude, abusing or misusing the power that one has will bring injustice towards people. On the other hand, global crises that have been occurring over time must also be taken into serious consideration and must be spoken more on how people, especially the authority, can handle this issue from worsening. To be precise, when the global economic crisis issue has been increasing, there will be more cases of the misuse and abuse of rights, as people tend to be greedy and selfish, especially when it comes to things like property and wealth issues. The authority must acknowledge how serious these issues are, that it will even affect the country if no legal actions were being made. As much as proper actions must be taken, changes could not be done if the society themselves would not start the change they want. Allah has mentioned in the Quran, Allah will never change a blessing He has bestowed upon any people unless they change what is within themselves, and because of Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. Misuse and abuse of rights are from the humans themselves, and they are great. Hence, if this attitude still exists in oneself, the issue will never be solved, and the economic crisis will only become more serious over time. Sustainable development goals that have been used as benchmark have contributed so much, especially to help people to handle this issue on abuse and misuse of rights and the global economic crisis. When everyone contributes to make their country a better place with less to no serious economic crisis, people will not have to be constantly worried about how they are going to survive in the future. Sustainable development goals will also be achieved successfully, and the society will have a just and peaceful life.